These are the top 22 cards of 2022.
I'm your host, Joe Cherries.
I'm your host, BC, joined by Amber, and that makes us the Nitpicking Nerds. We're wrapping up the best cards of the year, but I would like to point your attention to our Patreon, which you can subscribe to support us monthly with your own dollars. And if you do, you're going to make the channel even better for next year. And we even got some new rewards you can check out over there.
Yeah, which is pretty cool. We'll love you as much as we can without making you uncomfortable, obviously. If you want to support us indirectly, you can buy Magic cards using tcgplayer.com. As long as you start with our affiliate link in the description below, you'll be supporting Nerds. You'll spend the same amount of money that you would have anyway, but the Nerds get a kickback.
And the Nerds are sponsored by Moxfield. It's a great website. You're going to be hearing from it at a surprise time in this video. And happy birthday to everyone's birthday is today, but it's the best of the year. Only cards that were released this year. No reprints. All the sets from this year. There's Kamigawa, there's Capenna, there's 1,000 more, and we're going to go over the 22 best cards.
Yes, and we're also talking about cards in the 99. We're not talking about as Commander. We're talking about cards in the 99 of decks that have other commanders.
Yeah, so 22. The 22nd most powerful card this year is Abdel Adrian Gorian's Ward. You can exile any number of non-land things, and you get a token for each one, and then when he leaves, they come back.
Yeah, so the main power here, this card is okay, and does a lot of little things okay, but he's got a lot of combo potential with things like Necromancy, Dance of the Dead, and Animate Dead. He just goes infinite with those cards. Therefore, he becomes way more powerful.
Yeah, you got Karmic Guide and a Sack Outlet. Oop, there we go. We went off.
He's obviously good as a commander, but that's not what we're talking about here today. We can just move on to the next one, which is Haywire Might, a 1-mana, 1/1 artifact, and you can pay a green and sacrifice it to exile a non-creature artifact.
Or enchantment. And you gain 2 life.
Or enchantment. The gains life is pretty irrelevant, but it is there, and it is gravy on top of this card. This is just another variant of the Reclamation Sage, Caustic Caterpillar that we've seen a million times. And this is a really, really good one, especially because it has artifact synergies, and it ends up being just 2 mana, which is the rate you would pay for a naturalized normally.
Yeah, so it's got, you save a mana off Caterpillar, you exile instead of destroy, which a lot of these cards do, and you gain 2 life, which some decks actually care about. Haywire Might's just like a bunch of little things put together. It's going to be great. Thank you, Amber.
My least favorite part of this card is the text that says non-creature will be relevant some percentage of the time, and that definitely hits this card a little bit.
Yeah, every once in a while there's going to be like a Worm Coil or a Perforos or something that's turned on, and you're going to feel bad. But you can hit Perforos when it's turned off, and Caustic Caterpillar can't do that. Number 20, this card from the same set as Haywire Might, it's Demolition Field. It's Field of Ruin, but it doesn't suck because it only does the 2 people involved in the exchange. No one else looks for a land. Therefore, it is very good.
One of the things that gets this card so high up is it is very low opportunity cost and goes in a ton of decks. I think the second you can't get a Wasteland or you can't get a Strip Mine into your deck, this is the third best option. This is the go-to, and this even has some upsides on the Strip Mines and the Wastelands, which is awesome. It's one of the best ways to put land destruction in your deck without hurting yourself.
Yeah, this card is fantastic, and it's like 2 cents, so just even further, like, you don't get extra points for being budget, but so far all the first 3 cards are very budget.
Yeah, they are all very cheap. And the next one is not. Actually, it was really expensive when it first came out, and now it's like $6, $7, and it's Smuggler's Share. At each end step you check, if an opponent drew 2 cards, you draw a card, and if an opponent had 2 lands on you, you get a treasure, and that goes for each opponent. So if all your opponents drew a card, you get 3 cards.
Yeah, if your opponents all draw 2 cards.
Yes.
You get 3 cards.
Yes, it's totally reasonable and will happen all the time. I have this card in one deck, and it's performed very, very well. It sticks in the battlefield because enchantments are one of the tougher types to remove, and it just gets you incremental value over and over again. When players take their turn, that's when they're most likely to draw a card, and they've already drawn 1 card for that turn, meaning that you're easily going to get the triggers to draw some cards. And once this card replaces itself, all the extra stuff just becomes this nice gravy, this extra little stuff to get.
Yeah, I want to test more with this. I'm not 100% sure whether it should be 3 spots lower or 3 spots higher. It still is one of the best cards that came out this year. I want to do some more testing. I was going to say, like, fetch lands are really good, but they're only good if they fetch right away because I can just wait and not give you the trigger.
Yeah, but it's probably like an 80% thing. I think when you play a fetch, you crack it on your turn 80% of the time, unless it's turn 1 or 2.
Then you just do it.
On to number 18, which is Ancient Copper Dragon. It's a 6/5 flyer. When it hits, you roll a d20 and you get that many treasures. This card is big, splashy, over the top, and it is the most aggressively costed. All these dragons are pretty good, but this one has the best ability and costs the least mana.
Kind of confusing why they just threw it on there's an obvious number 1. They just threw it all on the 1 card.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really, really strange because, like, it's not like the other ones are bad, but this one is far and away the best one. It's really good. I mean, if you have a deck that can give this creature haste, this is a card you can just put in your deck. It's great for Dragon deck. It's great for your treasure decks. And any deck that wants to roll dice.
Yes, any deck that wants to roll dice, Ancient Copper Dragon's probably your best card. This thing's just going to power out giant plays. It's like a Tali to me, where it's like this thing desperately wants haste, but as soon as it does, oh boy, watch out.
Yeah, and sometimes it just lives. I mean, sometimes you have to play it without protection, without haste.
It feels bad, but then sometimes it does live.
Yeah, it's not every turn somebody has removal, so sometimes they'll just live, get in, and just make you a ton of treasures.
Right. Expect removal, but be happy when you don't have it happen. Number 17, Grand Crescendo. You're making X1/1s at instant speed, and also your dude's getting indestructible, so you can either just fire it off as a 2-mana stop a board wipe, or just end step, like secure the waste, basically. Oh, here's like 8 dudes.
Yeah, this card is super, like, versatile, like you said. This can just be hold up 2 mana, use it as a protection spell, which is great, like, because that's a decent rate. Like,
that's above rate, because your unbreakable formations, like those kind of rootborn defenses, the like D- cards, they're all 3.
Yeah, exactly. That's very true. So white, you can hold this up at any time, and then it has other things that, like, so much more to this card. You get to make these tokens, and then they become indestructible, meaning that you can just block with them. There's so many. There are going to be a lot of situations where players will attack you, and you'll just make your whole team indestructible with a bunch of new guys and just block and just blow them out because your guys are all just literally can't be killed.
Yeah, you pass and hold up the mana, or now somebody's trying to. Now that you've held up the mana, somebody's trying to kill your best creature. I'll just make them all indestructible. Here's the bunch of dudes I was going to make anyway.
This card's so perfect for token strategies because it makes tokens and protects your board. 2 things tokens are asking for all the time. They want both of those things in their deck, and this is doing them.
And usually protecting your board is like, ooh, awkward slot that if I'm winning does nothing. But this one still does things.
Yeah, exactly. You get to play another version of Secure to Waste, but this one protects your board too.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. What's number 16?
Number 16 is Aerial Extortionist, and when it enters or deals combat damage to a player, you exile target non-land permanent. They can cast it, but whenever an opponent casts something not from their hand, you draw a card.
This card's been awesome. I love it so much. That text of whenever somebody casts a spell from not their hand, draw a card, that's a lot of cards. Counts command zone, graveyard, whatever.
Yeah, there's a lot of cards that just end up getting cast not from your hand in a lot of different ways. Red has a ton of impulse draw type stuff. Blue has a ton of flashback from your graveyard. There's a million little tiny things that just, you don't realize it, but things are getting cast from not the hand all the time when you're playing current Magic the Gathering.
Yes, and does that make Washed Away good? No, it does not. Aerial Extortionist also comes with removal, and when it hits, it's more removal. It slows opponents down. Kind of forces them to recast their stuff too, which just gives you guaranteed cards.
Yeah, and if they're not recasting their thing, that means this was just a removal spell. The thing's just staying off the battlefield. Either you're getting card draw or you're getting removal. You're getting one or the other.
Yeah, and I love that it can't be undone. That thing's exiled.
Yeah.
It's not Fiend Hunter. You have to recast it.
Yes, you have to spend all the mana. Next, we have Braids Arisen Nightmare. This card is one that kind of surprised us, but it is really good. As long as you have disposable things, you sacrifice at your end step. Each opponent can sacrifice something that shares a type with it. If they don't, they lose 2, and you draw a card. This thing is strong.
Mostly when they don't, because if you sacrifice an artifact or enchantment, there's like a 90% chance that's not happening for them. You're going to get at least 2 cards off of it. And creature, you're probably going to get 1 card, maybe 2. Usually not all 3, but we're removing creatures off the battlefield and we're drawing cards and we're dealing damage to our opponents.
Yeah,
for 3 mana.
This card really, really is good. It just requires that you have a deck that has things that are not very good.
Expendable.
And a lot of black decks do. Red-black is a big sacrifice thing. Black-white is big into the aristocrats type
tokens
strategy.
too.
Yeah, and then you can get token strategies, also another big one. So there's just tons of black decks have expendable dump things to sacrifice this, throw away, not lose any value, and then draw cards.
Yeah, and if you're already in like an artifact deck, like Glissa or something, just get this in there all day.
Yeah, it does fit perfectly in something silly like Glissa. Up next is, speaking of Glissa, she loves blood. Blood for the blood god.
Blood for Glissa the blood god. This is like 1,000 mana, and you deal 8 to all your opponents, and you draw 8 cards, but it's reduced if the creatures died this turn, so if there was a board wipe, or you sacrifice a bunch of creatures, all of a sudden it's like Wheel of Fortune just for you, and also deal 24 damage divided.
Yeah, I say this is number 14 because it's number 14.
It's number 14.
Yeah, this one's really, really good. I want to be playing multiple board wipes with this because I want to be able to wipe the board, then follow up with this huge swingy spell that dishes out a ton of damage and then just refuels me. Like,
Obviously, Blasphemous Act is the dream.
It's the dream, and it's not that uncommon to do because you're going to play them in a deck together. Toxic Deluge only costs 3 mana, so you have to be at 6 mana to go Toxic Deluge into this. That's not a lot.
Yeah, depending on what deck you are, Vanquish the Horde is only 2 mana, just stuff like that. And if you have a sack outlet, a bunch of creatures, you're in full control.
Yeah, exactly. And the fact that this just, for some reason, this card would be good, even if it didn't dish out the 24 damage it does. But it does.
8. Okay.
Exactly. It's like this would just be a nice hand refueler that like you can cast when creatures die. But it's like, no.
Now you're just killing people.
It's also just dishing out a ton of damage. This card is awesome. I'm a huge fan of it, and honestly, you should try it. If you have a Rakdos deck right now and you don't have this in, just put it in. Try it.
Yeah, and speaking of putting it in our decks that we make online, I'm thinking number 13 should be Shieldred, the Apocalypse. It's 2 black for a 4/5, and when they draw, they lose 2, and when you draw, you gain 2.
Wow, that was...
We got to keep them guessing.
They're not guessing. Shieldred, the Apocalypse is really strong. It's an overperformer. This card is very annoying. It sticks on the battlefield. The life that they gain, that's annoying. The life that you lose, that's annoying. Every little thing this card does is annoying.
But is it annoying for this to always be the best card in play? Not always. So sometimes it gets a little extra mileage. It's like, oh, it's not an Avengers Zendikar. We have to kill that right away. This is like, I'll get around to it.
Yeah, exactly. And if your opponents aren't drawing extra cards and this is just dealing 2 a turn, you're probably winning that game because any player that's not drawing extra cards over the course of the game is losing the game because they're going to run out of resources a lot quicker than you, the player who's probably drawing cards.
Yes, and I love pairing this and some other cards. You get random value out of lands like throw a Gyre Reach Sanitarium in your deck if you have a Shieldred. It's like, all right, deal 2, I'll gain 2, and we're all even on cards, so it's not the worst.
Yeah, exactly. It is a nice little synergy. I would definitely put it in if Shieldred was my commander.
Well, for sure, yeah. But if it's in my deck, I'll maybe find a way to put it in.
Yeah, moving on to number 12, we have a green card, and it's Defiler of Vigor.
Still great.
It's a 6/6 for 5. Instead of paying 1 green pip, you can pay 2 life instead. And whenever you cast a green permanent spell, put a +1/+1 counter on all your creatures, including it. Why is this one so aggressively good?
It's the Copper Dragon of that cycle.
It really is because it's the best in every single way. It's a big, over-the-top splashy threat, and like the black one like pumps one of your creatures. And gives it menace. What if your whole team got +1 counters, including this thing, which is already a 6/6 for 5 with Trample?
Yeah, with Trample, this is like the counters deck's dream. Anytime you ever Llanowar Elves, it makes this even better because you can start firing them off right afterwards. You got Guardian Projects and Great Henges in green. Now you're just storming off, putting counters on your team. It's just like amazing. There's just nothing this thing doesn't do, but it is specifically a counters card for the most part.
It's a counters card, or you can do it in if you have a go wide green deck, it can just fit in there too. Maybe your cost reducer tribal likes this deck.
Ooh, okay. Yeah, cost reducer tribal does like this deck.
Yes. Number 11 is Awaken the Woods, and this is X. Green, make X Dryad Arbors.
Yeah, they're forest creatures. They have summoning sickness, but they are also lands, so you're just getting, it's literally trigger and landfall X green times, untap with like double your mana, and just go ham.
Yeah, exactly. It's really, really silly because this card's like, you wipe the board, or I'm just left with all these lands. I'm untapping with a ton of mana. I could go wide. I could just slam a crate up and win round. Or I could just make 30 mana and just win that way.
But what did I spend if you want to wipe the board? I spent 1 card.
Yeah, exactly. So it's still, you're just getting 1 for 1. It's not really, it doesn't even feel that bad. And certain board wipes, like your Hour of Revelations, won't wipe these away because they're lands.
Cyclonic Rift?
It's true, yeah. Cyclonic Rift just will not get rid of these. They will stay on the battlefield because they do have the land type.
Yeah, God forbid you have Tireless Tracker or Tireless Provisioner or Lotus Cobra or any of that stuff going on. Lotus Cobra and Provisioner make this spell free.
That's what this card shines.
Yeah,
right?
it just starts getting over the top.
When you're playing your landfall decks, this card starts shining a ton because it becomes get X landfall, where X is the number of lands you control -2. It's like, what?
Okay.
Those numbers get insane because you're in a landfall deck, which ramps like crazy.
Exactly. And then we can move right into the top 10 with Moxfield.com. They're sponsored the channel. It's a 0 mana for website that you can cast and optimize all your decks, sort them the way you want, and then when you play games, you're 10% more likely to win.
I can't even describe how much better you will build decks. Yes, that's what I said. You will build decks this much better. Moxfield.com has a million tools for you to sort, view your deck, see its mana value. These are things you can't get when you're building in paper. Moxfield.com does all of it for you. As soon as you put in a card, it does the math. Like, if you have 100 cards in the deck and you add 101st card, it adds that. It does the math immediately. How amazing is that? The math to do the average mana value, the total mana value, any of that. It does all the math right away. It's
average
insane.
lands in your opening hand, average curve. It just... This is the best deck building website out there.
It is. It really is the best deck building website. Moxfield.com. Check it out.
All right. We're actually in the top 10 now. 10 best cards released this year. Number 10 is Ledger Shredder. If anyone casts their second spell, it connives. And if you discard a non-land, it gets a counter. So this thing just ends up accruing a bunch of advantage. It ends up getting like a 4/6 or a 3/5 or something. So it's a nice little chunky flyer. And it's just so low investment. And it's great for your graveyard decks. It's great for your decks that want to draw extra cards. It's great for your decks that want to discard cards. It's great in a Flyers deck. It just does everything.
Yeah, exactly. That's how exactly how I feel about it. As soon as you have that little bit of synergy, this card is great. I wouldn't just put it in any blue deck, but if you
just need any excuse.
Any excuse. Any excuse. You want a blue pip on the battlefield. Good enough.
Yeah.
I'll put this in my deck. This card really does perform that well. The card selection is a lot. And when that card selection becomes card advantage with things like Madness, this card pops off. This thing also just gets big. Like, really, really fast. Sometimes you just 3-4 turns later, you're like, oh, this thing has 10 power. It's a 10 power flyer. That's chunking someone for 1/4 of their life.
Yeah, if you have a Ledger Shredder laying around, you should probably be putting it in one of your decks. It's very, very good. What is number 9? This might come as a surprise.
It's actually Karlash, Fury of Avernus, and honestly, this card is amazing. It's a 5-mana creature, and whenever you attack for the first time each turn, you get an additional combat after this one. Untap your creatures. They gain first strike.
And it's whenever you attack, not whenever Karlach attacks. Okay, this is like weirdly pushed. It's like, you know, all the background commanders and the mythic backgrounds, like, oh, they're pretty good. And this one's just like, no, this is a card you just play in your deck, and it's one of the best ways to make extra combats ever.
I think it is the best way to get an extra combat, period, excluding going infinite with, like, Aggravated Assault.
Or, yeah, like Combat Celebrant. But this is like, as far as if you want one extra combat, this is like your best bet.
Exactly, yeah. Like, if you're not going infinite with infinite combats, this is the best one. This card is really, really surprisingly strong. Like,
it's right up there with Godo and Aurelia.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. Except this thing doesn't even have to attack. You just play it, and you do it the first turn. And Aurelia does also have that, which is really, really cool. But this card doesn't even have to put itself in danger.
And you get first strike. You just get a little bonus.
Yes, that is what makes this. That is what I think makes this the best version of this, because none of the other ones give you first strike. This is just a huge bonus that on top of the combat, your creatures have first strike, not only for the second combat, but the first one, because it triggers in the first combat.
Yeah, seriously, you got to watch out for this thing. Don't let them attack when this is out. It's way worse than it looks for you. It's better for them.
And it also comes out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm. Boop.
Yeah, and I believe that makes it nice. It goes boop,
boop, in.
Oh, what's number 8? BZ?
Number 8 is Loran of the Third Path. Oh man, I love this card. Turns out Awaken the Woods was our number 1 during the set review, but Joe was way higher on a card that you'll see later, and I'm way higher on this card. I think this card goes in basically every white deck that's ever existed, and it's got a strict upgrade to Reclamation Sage, a very playable card. When you need cards, or when somebody, I was thinking earlier, when somebody's about to die, you just start giving them cards, because they're going to lose. You're going to kill them. And then you just start profiting.
Also, regardless of like what our old order was, our opinions constantly change.
Oh, yeah.
Like, if we made this list in 2 weeks, I guarantee things would change, because Magic the Gathering is a complex game and we don't know it perfectly.
Yeah, I think Lauren will get even higher in 2 weeks.
Lauren is really, really interesting because her ability really is bad. And we would never play that card if it didn't enter in a Rec Sage, right? So,
right, and she doesn't force you to do the ability also.
Yeah, so you're only going to use the ability when it's relevant to you, when you want it, when it's good. Even though it's a bad ability, it is a strict upgrade from something like Reclamation Sage. It just doesn't have that extra line of text.
I'm never, ever, ever playing each opponent draws a card, I draw 2, or someone draws 3 and I draw 3, but I'm down a card and spent 3 mana. I'm not doing that. This is a great, amazing card, totally playable, flicker it, recur it, whatever. It's got vigilance, even better. And then when I need to, if I'm desperate or when someone's about to die, I'm going to start drawing cards.
I think the closest thing to a playable version of the draw thing is the Master of Ceremonies that kind of does that, where on your upkeep each player can get a treasure, a 1/1, or draw a card. That's like the most playable version of your opponents get something and you get all of it too.
And now it's this one, because this is going to be in everything. And
That's
you
true.
Pick up 10 Laurens, you're going to play them all.
I don't know about that. If you have to have 10 white decks and they all have to care about creatures.
I think if you have 10 white decks, 9 of them probably want Lauren.
That's fair, but now they need to have 11 white decks so they can get the 10th Lauren in.
Go build 11 white decks.
All right. Up next is number 7, Archivist of Ogma.
Yeah, you can play this card too.
You can play this card too. A 2-mana 2/2, and whenever an opponent searches the library, you gain a life and draw a card.
Yep. This kind of scales a little weirdly. It's sort of weaker in their lower powers, but the more competitive you get, pretty much consistently, it just gets stronger and stronger as they introduce fetch lands and tutors and all this stuff. And even in low power, you're still cultivating.
This is very varying in power level depending on the group you play with. If there's a ton of people who are playing green and playing a ton of fetch lands and playing a ton of tutors, all of a sudden this card's just like amazing. It's the best thing in your deck. But then you flip the script, and sometimes you're going to be in pods where they don't play tutors, they don't have fetch lands, and it's like it just becomes this weak medium card where only green
it'll probably can't
ramp. Only green ramp really gets you there. It's interesting. Card's definitely good, period. Like, it will get you card advantage almost every single time. It's rare that it doesn't. I have seen it draw 0 cards, but that is the exception, not what usually happens.
Yeah, this card is fantastic. The ability is low enough impact that people will let you do it, and not high enough impact that this thing is like the most obvious must-kill target. It's great. Number 6 is Lethal Scheme from New Capenna Commander. 2 black, you destroy a creature or planeswalker, and then each creature that convoked this thing connives. Oh yeah, this thing has Convoke, which means it can be basically free if you have enough creatures, or 1 mana, or 2. It's almost always castable, and you just get to loot 4 cards if you do it for free.
Yeah, this card is really, really good, and it weirdly, not only does it reward you by not making you pay mana, it rewards you by giving you conniving. It's a really strange card. This card is really, really strong. Well, that's what conniving does. Conniving gives counters. We know this.
Well, it's just like you get power, you get card selection, you get a free spell, and you get to destroy something.
Yeah, exactly. And free spells are very, very powerful. You want this, obviously, in a deck that has a decent number of black creatures because you want to be able to get those black pips covered. Mm-hmm. And in order to pay for the black pips, you do have to tap black creatures.
Yes. So for free removal, we have another one in the free category next to Deadly Rollick and Snuff Out. Now you also have Lethal Scheme, and the Lethal Scheme can be better than the first 2 in certain decks.
Which is really cool. The idea that this card can outperform all-stars like Snuff Out and literal staple of the format Deadly Rollick is just, that says something about the card. It's not, this card isn't better than those, but it can outperform them.
Yes, it can definitely outperform them. Lethal Scheme, sweet magic card.
Yeah, very high ceiling on Lethal Scheme.
Oh yeah, I mean, definitely one of the best cards this year. If you don't have one, get yourself one.
Number 5 is a little bit boring, but it is some of the best cards this year, and it is the Triumphs from New Capenna.
Gotta eat your vegetables.
You gotta eat your vegetables. They're very good, and they're good, let's be very clear, because of fetch lands. Because if there weren't fetch lands, these would be very medium.
Yeah, I don't think I would play these without fetch lands, but they are very, very good with fetch lands and anything like, Wood Elves and Nature's Lore and all that stuff. They are staples of 3-color, 4-color, and sometimes 5-color decks. In 5-color, you don't want all of them, but I'm certainly glad to have some of them.
Yeah, exactly. And there's just not that much to talk about with these. They are very, very good, period. They are great fixing. Use them. 3-color decks should always play the first one, I think. A 4-color deck should probably play 2 or 3, depending on their color pairings. And
that's 3 or so in 5-color.
Yeah, 3 or so in 5-color, depending. Probably just go, maybe like, I would say, maybe you want all the green ones, because you can have you can have ramp that goes and gets forest, which is very specific in getting those. So let's just move on to number 4, my probably favorite card from the year, Urza's Silex, and it is 3 mana for a bowl. Obviously, it's a bowl.
Yes.
How could it not be? And you pay 2 white, exile it, and then each player chooses 6 lands, and you destroy all other permanents.
Including lands.
Including lands, yes. So the 6 lands that weren't chosen, or not the 6 lands, but the lands that weren't chosen among the 6, they're gone. This is a great way to combat ramp. And I think
punishing ramp.
You punishing those ramp decks that really go all in on getting all their lands on the battlefield. Like BZ's currently playing a deck that really does that. You have a Beldros deck.
Oh yeah.
And this would punish it so hard. I think Urza Silex is an amazing card, and you should really be trying it. And also has just extra text because
you can go get a planeswalker.
Like if you want, like I would try and find a planeswalker to put in my deck. Like what fits best in my deck, just because there's this little synergy. This just draws a card afterward if you do that.
Here's what you do. You play it, and then you untap with it, obviously, because we're living in magical Christmas land. You pay 4, sack it, but you've also floated 6 mana. So now you use 3 mana to go get Ashiok, and then you exile their graveyards after you put their lands there.
Oh, that's a spicy one. What deck are you playing? This is
You're playing Esper Silex.
This is Esper Urza Silex with Ashiok.
Yes, this card is obviously amazing. The only question in terms of how much play it'll see is how fun is this card. If people think it's miserable, they're not really going to play it. It kind of has not the highest EDH Rec score right now. But on the flip side, there's no denying how strong this card is.
Yeah, it's really interesting. This card I need to put in all my white decks because honestly, I think it is and should just be a staple of this format. It seems like the most fair way to control lands and get a little bit of and people love that mass land destruction. Get a little bit of that mass land destruction without going over the top.
Just a taste. Take out your Armageddon and put in Urza Silex, and if you don't have any of that stuff, take out your by invitation only and try out an Urza Silex.
Yeah. Well, combat those green decks with Urza Silex.
Yeah, we're going to go to number 3.
Yes.
This is from Baldur's Gate Commander also, and it kind of just goes off with anything. It's Displacer Kitten, 4 mana 2/2, non-creature spells flicker permanents now. Oh, great. I cast a lot of those, so I'm just going to flicker all my creatures, get some more ATBs, flicker my mana rocks, make some mana. I'll just do whatever I want.
The thing about this is cards that exile and return things to the battlefield are just playable spells. So
people play Cloud Shift, yeah.
People play Cloud Shift. People play Ephemerate. Mm-hmm. These cards are playable Magic cards. So when you just add that ability to every single instant in sorcery you cast, obviously this is an incredibly strong card, and this doesn't even just flicker creatures.
Well, it also triggers off of enchantments, planeswalkers, and artifacts.
Yes, this is a silly Magic card, very strong. The fact that it doesn't hit just creatures just gives it that much more power. You can't kill this thing. How are we supposed to kill it? Are they holding up mana? Well, you're not going to kill it.
They're just going to flicker itself, and then your spot removal fizzles. This thing, you have to kill it right away. And even then, it might be too late.
Yeah, exactly. This card is very silly. And on top of that, it does have combos by itself. If your deck is built right, this and Spellseeker just literally goes off by itself.
Yeah, you basically just start casting your whole deck. Now, these last two, I think, if you know the Nitpicking Nerds really, really well, you can guess them easily. We're going to go to number 2, second best card this year. It's Farewell. You're exiling creatures, artifacts, enchantments, and graveyards. But you get to actually just choose any of those. You get to mix and match whatever's best for you. The exiling graveyards is just the absolute brutality that seals the deal on this card.
Yeah, exactly. This card is very, very good, and I'm glad. I was super duper high on it right away, and BZ's come, I think, up to my level.
I've come up on it,
which I love because BZ was like,
I was really high on it.
We were already high on it.
Yeah.
Don't get us wrong, but like I like that we've come even higher on it. This card is one of the best board wipes in the format because it exiles everything and you get choices, meaning when you have all the best artifacts, you just don't choose that mode. You have the best graveyard, you don't choose that mode. This card is modal, making it absolutely insanely strong.
It's almost never bad. I mean, if you're ahead on board, you can still punish them. It's just a kick in the butt for everybody.
There's also a lot of situations where the average board wipe doesn't save you. When you're playing those graveyard decks that just doesn't matter. You wipe the board, it's not going to save you. Even if you have, think about like Merciless Eviction, which is a much worse version of this. It's like that won't save you because they have sack outlets. Like I can't exile. If I exile the board, it doesn't do anything. Go ahead. Sacrifice your board in response to me doing this. I'm going to exile graveyard. You're not getting that stuff back.
Get the value you can out of sacking, but there's nothing else. After this, you just have the cards in your hand and the lands on the battlefield. That's it.
Yes. And number 1 is not even close.
Not even remotely close. It's Sokenzan.
It's not close. And Farewell's amazing.
Yeah.
But these cards are amazing. If we had to pick one card, it would be
Sokenzan.
Sokenzan. But it'd actually be Boseiju. This card is ridiculous. Obviously,
the channel lands. Yeah, it's the whole cycle.
It's the whole cycle, but obviously, like specifically, Boseiju is a green untapped source that is a removal spell.
Excuse me.
Instead of a land,
can't be countered.
Yeah.
It hits lands too. Just absolutely fantastic. Otawara and Takanuma are the next best ones. They're just straight up card advantage or removal, and then you still play a Ganjo every once in a while. You'll kill an attacker and Sokenzan if you want tokens. Boom.
In one color decks, they are absolute 100% staples. I think in 2 color decks. Same thing.
Absolutely,
you're playing
staples.
both these. And then once you hit 3 colors, I'm only playing Otawara.
The Sultai ones.
Or, yes, the Sultai ones, yeah. Not Takanuma, I'm lower on.
I still like it.
But Otawara and Boseiju are going to my 3 color decks. Those are absolutely ridiculous. The thing about these is the cost is nothing. They fit MDFCs in the untapped colored lands. that when you don't need that color land is removal. Or maybe you do need the land, but missing a land drop's way better because you can get rid of their Gaia's Cradle or something like that.
Yeah, these cards, I can't believe they snuck MDFCs into Neon Dynasty. Just amazing. If these were actual MDFCs, we'd be freaking out because I think it would look even better than it is right now, where it'd be like, oh, untapped blue land with no downside. Or 4-mana spell. And it's like the fact that these reduce themselves is just, that did not need to be on any of these cards, and it just makes them even better.
And they're better than being MDFCs because they cannot be countered.
That's not even spells.
This is an ability. They can be countered by things that counter spells or abilities, but those are way less common than things that counter spells. Counter spells are obviously seen all the time. How often do you see a disallow? Hopefully never, because that card stinks.
It's in the Anti-Nitpicking Nerds deck. Also, randomly, you do get value from discarding them. They're a card you discard, so that's just extra stuff they do. They are fantastic. They're some of the best lands in the format. So obviously, any one of them is going to be number one, especially Boseiju.
Yeah, Boseiju is the real number one. Channel lands overall.
They're hanging out.
Sharing the spot together.
But if you're thinking about a card and you go, what about this card? It was probably released last year, and you can go see it probably on our top 21 of 2021.
Or it's Black Market Connections. Peace out, Tribe Scouts.